Every man walked away from the auction block. Every single one. Until a stranger said 3 words that changed everything.
I'll pay $20. 4 times the asking price. For a bride I cannot see.
He married her without seeing her face. No questions.
2 years I've been hidden since the fire took half my face.
He smiled, not with pity, not with fear, but with... When she finally lifted the sack, he saw the scars everyone feared. Then he did something no one else had done.
The auction block stood in the center of Redemption Springs, a settlement carved from stubborn earth where the prairie met the foothills. Dust devils danced between the wooden buildings as the afternoon sun beat down on the gathered crowd. Merchants, ranchers, and drifters had come from 50 miles around, drawn by rumors of land grants and unclaimed brides arriving on the westbound train. 17 women stood in a nervous line, each one dressed in their finest clothes despite the long journey. They shifted in their boots, eyes scanning the crowd of weathered men who'd paid good money just to attend. This was the West's practical answer to loneliness, women seeking security, men seeking companionship, a transaction wrapped in hope. But at the end of the line stood someone different, a figure in a burlap covering that hung from head to shoulders, with only rough-cut holes for eyes. The coarse fabric was cinched at the neck with twine. While the other women wore ribbons and showed their faces to the sun, this one remained hidden. The auctioneer, a rail-thin man named Hoskins, worked his way down the line with rehearsed charm. One by one, the women were introduced, their qualities announced like livestock at market. One could cook. Another had teaching credentials from Boston, a widow with strong hands for farm work. The crowd responded with raised hands and called bids, and within an hour, only 3 women remained. Then 2, then only the one in the sack. Hoskins cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Now, gentlemen, we have one final offering. This here is a woman of legal age, able-bodied according to the documents, and willing to honor a marriage contract. Why is she covered? Someone shouted. Let's see her face, another voice joined. Hoskins held up his hands. The arrangement is stated clearly. The covering remains until after the marriage is finalized. The price is reduced significantly given the circumstances. We'll start bidding at $5. Silence fell over the remaining crowd. Men shuffled backward, suddenly interested in their boot laces. $5 was nothing, less than a good saddle blanket, but not one hand rose. $5, Hoskins repeated, sweat beading on his forehead. For a legal wife and helpmate. More silence. Someone laughed nervously. The figure in the burlap stood perfectly still, but her hands, visy, beneath the covering, trembled slightly. Anyone? Do I hear $5? The crowd began to disperse. The other men had gotten what they came for, and the spectacle had lost its entertainment value. Hoskins looked desperately at the remaining stragglers. That's when the stranger spoke. I'll pay it. Heads turned. A man stood at the edge of the crowd, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair touching his collar, and a beard that hadn't seen scissors in months. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind earned through honest work. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to solitude. You'll pay the $5? Hoskins asked, relief flooding his voice. I'll pay $20. A murmur rippled through the remaining onlookers. $20 was a fair price, the same several other women had commanded. Sir, you understand the terms? Hoskins pressed. You cannot see her face until after you're legally bound. I understand. And you're willing to. I said I'll pay it. Get the preacher. Within 30 minutes, the transaction was complete. The stranger signed papers he barely read, counted out $20 silver, and stood beside the covered wound man while a circuit preacher recited vows. She spoke her agreement in a voice so soft it barely carried, muffled further by the burlap. He spoke his own vows clearly, looking straight ahead. When it was done, the stranger offered his arm. I've got a wagon waiting. It's a 2-hour ride to my land." She took his arm with those trembling hands. They rode in silence as the settlement disappeared behind them. The wagon creaked along a rutted path that climbed gradually into rolling hills covered in long grass. Hawks circled overhead. A creek appeared, winding silver through the landscape. "I run cattle," he finally said, eyes on the trail. "About 200 head right now. The ranch is small but growing. There's a house. Built it myself 3 years back. 2 rooms and a loft. It's not fancy, but it's solid." She didn't respond, just sat rigid beside him, the burlap sack shifting slightly with the wagon's movement. "I'll be honest with you," he continued. "I'm not good with words. Never have been. I can work from sunup to sundown without complaint, but conversation doesn't come natural. Some people find that difficult." Still no response. "I came down from the Northern Territory. IS 5 years ago. Started with nothing but a land claim and a good horse. Built everything you'll see with my own hands. It's lonely work. I thought maybe it didn't have to be lonely anymore." He paused, then added quietly, "Whatever's under that covering, I figure you've got your reasons for hiding it. And I figure you're probably more scared right now than I've ever been facing down a stampede. So, I want you to know something. When we get to the house, you can take that off in your own time. No one's going to force you. It's just you and me out here, and I don't need you to be anything except willing to try." For the first time, she turned her head toward him. Through the rough-cut eye holes, he caught a glimpse of something, but not enough to see clearly. The house appeared as the sun began its descent, painting the sky orange and gold. It sat in a small valley with the creek running nearby, surrounded by cottonwood trees. Just as he'd said, it was simple but well built, with a stone chimney and real glass windows. He helped her down from the wagon, then carried her single bag, light as kindling, into the house. Inside was clean and sparse. A table he'd be. Uilt, 2 chairs. A stove that actually worked. Shelves lined with tins and supplies. "That door leads to the bedroom," he said, pointing. "It's yours. I'll sleep in the loft. There's water in the pitcher, and I'll bring more from the creek. Take whatever time you need." He turned to leave, to give her space, but her voice stopped him. "Why?" It was the first full word she'd spoken directly to him. Her voice was clearer now, young and uncertain. "Why what? Why did you pay for me? Everyone else walked away. You could have done the same." He stood with his back to her, hand on the door frame. "You want the honest truth?" "Yes. When I was 12 years old, my family was crossing the plains in a wagon train. We got caught in a late snow. Food ran out. Then my little sister got sick, a fever that wouldn't break. My mother begged every family in that train for help. Medicine, food, anything. They all said no, said they had their own to worry about. My sister died 3 days before we reached the fort." He paused, old pain threading through his words. "I learned something in that snow. I learned that sometimes people need someone to say yes when the whole world says no. Looked at you standing there, and I saw my sister. I saw someone who needed one person to say yes. So I did." Silence filled the room. Then came a sound he hadn't expected. She was crying, soft sobs muffled by the burlap. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to. No one has shown me kindness in 2 years," she whispered. "Not one person." He turned slowly. She stood in the middle of his simple home, still covered, her hands clutched together. 2 years? Since the accident, since the fire. Understanding dawned. You're burned. My face, my neck, the right side mostly. I was cooking for my family when my dress caught the stove flame. My father beat out the fire, but the damage was done. After I healed, he said no man would have me as I was. He said my only chance was to go west, where men were desperate enough not to care. He made me wear this so I wouldn't scare people. Anger flashed through him, not at her, but at a father who would treat his daughter so. "You can take it off. You don't understand. It's not just scarring. It's I don't care. You will. Everyone does." The doctor couldn't even look at me. My own mother cried every time she saw me. Children. And ran away. That's why no one would bid. Hoskins told them beforehand about my face. He walked closer, slowly, like approaching a spooked horse. Listen to me. I've seen men torn apart by grizzly bears and put back together with whiskey and thread. I've seen cowboys dragged by horses until there wasn't much human left. I've pulled men from under stampedes. Whatever is under that sack, it doesn't scare me, but it's ugly. Ooh. So is branding cattle and birthing calves and half the things that make up life out here. Ugly is just part of living. She stood frozen for a long moment. Then, with shaking hands, she reached for the twine at her neck. "You don't have to," he said. "Not for me. I'm tired," she whispered. "So tired of hiding." The twine came loose. The burlap lifted, and she stood before him. The right side of her face was indeed scarred, the skin puckered and discolored from eye to jaw, continuing down her neck. It pulled her mouth slightly at one corner and had taken part of her eyebrow. The damage was significant, the kind that would make strangers stare. But the left side of her face was untouched. High cheekbones, clear skin, and both eyes, green as creek water, were tea. He same. They watched him with desperate hope and terrible fear. He looked at her fully, taking in both sides, the scarred and the smooth. Then he did something she didn't expect. He smiled. "You've got kind eyes," he said simply. "That's what I notice." The sob that came from her was different this time. Not from pain, but from relief so profound it shook her whole body. He stepped forward and, very carefully, pulled her into an embrace. She collapsed against him, crying into his shoulder, while he stood steady, one hand gently patting her back. "It's all right now," he said quietly. "You're home." Outside, the prairie wind whispered through the cottonwoods. The creek sang its endless song, and inside the small house in the valley, two lonely people began to build something the world had told them they didn't deserve. A chance.